Welcome, acolytes. Today I'm reacting to why gamers have turned to pirating from legendary drops. And I don't know this. I'm actually quite interested in this thematic because I myself am not a fan of pirating anything, and I of course say that don't or do it. You know what I mean? But hey, if you're actually pirating, you wouldn't be a customer anyway, so there is definitely something. What I don't agree with is the indie thing, because I personally am not a fan of somebody actually pirating stuff from a indie studio that actually is from little guys, or a good thing. But in the end, if you pirated anyway, well, you wouldn't buy it in the first place, now would you? Or that's at least my theory. It can be wrong, it can be correct, as you know, blah blah blah, whoop whoop whoop. Let's just start and see what this is about, but I still don't agree with this one. So, look.
I love pirating indie games. Recently, a tweet went out garnering 20.5 million views where a user on Twitter had posted an image of themselves downloading the indie hit first-person shooter Ultra Kill. And the solo developer who made that game, going under the name Hakita, responded to the user saying, "As creator of said game, you should support indies if you can. But culture shouldn't exist only for those who can afford it. Ultra Kill wouldn't exist if I hadn't had easy access to movies, music, and games growing up. If you don't have money, you can support via word of mouth." That line of culture shouldn't exist.
Damn. I'm gonna interrupt instantly. This is actually quite beautifully said. I like how he said it, because it's actually quite true about this. It's, yes, on point. On point. I cannot even disagree with him, because it's that on point. Damn. Speechless.
Exist only for those who can afford it is beautiful. It's poetry, and honestly, it couldn't be any more true.
Yep, I agree with
him.
him.
Nothing but these CEOs and gaming industry heads coming out talking about how the industry is shrinking and they're worried about the future of gaming and how they need to appeal to a wider and broader modern audience. And the bell is tolled. It's been ringing loud and clear, and every...
Yeah, and by the... come on, like, I don't even think that he believes what he's saying right now, or he's just repeating that stuff and will say something else, but the gaming industry is fine. It thrives. It grows. It's fine. It's just in the worst place that it was before. Well, not even the worst place. It's more predatory than it was before. Let's say it like that. But it's still in a good place. Games are fine for most of the part. You can literally do games and just get the stuff done you actually have. It's quite incredible, if I'm gonna be honest. So yeah, this is just, well, basically making panic out of the nothing. But okay.
Everybody can hear it except for these guys. See, because gamers today have been doing whatever they can by any means necessary to play the games that they want to play. And that's only because these CEOs and the heads of the industry are more concerned with the payers rather than the players. If you've watched any of my videos, then you know this is a topic that I'm pretty passionate about, and that's holding published...
And by the way, okay, he didn't say anything about it for now. What he thinks about, so I'm gonna just say this. Because I think every one of us can agree that you need people who actually pay for your stuff so you can continue it. That's just the reality of it. And I mean, if I do something and I want to get paid for it, of course I want to get money for it. That's obvious. I still want to, even if I do something out of pure enjoyment, that doesn't mean that I don't need food. It's like this channel. If I ever get to the point where I have to make the decision between this channel and my job, well, guess what I'm gonna take? The thing that actually feeds me, for F's sake. And yes, if this channel actually makes some money, beautiful. Perfect. I'm gonna preferably do it. Because this is a preference, even if I make a bit less. That's a preference. And if I need this today actually wants to make money off it, I understand. Perfectly fine. But don't abuse it. Don't be predatory. That's the point of where most people just draw the line and say, well, nope, that's effed up. And if you just do the things you do, or pirate just indie games because they are indie games, that's scummy. If you pirate them because you cannot afford them, it's not legal. If you understand my jest. And even if you just want to try something you're not sure about, I mean, it's still not legal, wink wink. It's different, I mean, wink wink, of course it's not legal. But I mean, come on, like, who didn't get scammed before because of a game they thought it's fine? So yeah.
Publishers and studios accountable for the lies they weave and the graves that they've been digging themselves, all in the name of profit. Year over year, as the gaming industry has grown and gaming has gotten more popular, it's become less about the players and more about their investors. Marketing minds are taking control. These profit-seeking vampires with no understanding of how creative industries work are wreaking havoc on beloved studios and franchises, bleeding them dry and leaving their carcasses out to be picked by investors.
Yeah, and by the way, they don't know how to make something creative, but they sure as fuck know how to make money in the short term. I am not saying it's a good thing, for fuck's sake, but I mean, I'm gonna get some morons actually commenting on that one. But no, comment on that. I actually, because initially I am always like, for F's sake, just really, people just hear me. But on the other hand, I just delete those comments, and sometimes people just comment again. So I delete it again. I have the engagement, they have their fun, it's a win-win. So basically, do that, it's fine. And for those who actually want to engage in a real conversation, you're welcome.
Vultures. It shouldn't be a surprise to anybody at this point why piracy is on the rise, but let's break it down piece by piece so we understand why this is going on and why it's going to get bigger and why trying to stop it is the worst choice that these companies can make.
This morning, another major food company getting set to raise prices at the grocery store.
The Business Insider headline says it all. Millennials are getting priced out of cities, and researchers don't necessarily think the trend will change.
It's not the news drivers wanted to wake up to Wednesday morning as gas prices in California hit a record high.
Recently, unemployed full-time workers applied to an average of 30 jobs, only to receive an average of 4 callbacks or responses.
While this is what's happening in the U.S., this is happening all across the world. Plain and simple, money is tight, and while it might not be tight for everyone, it might not be tight for you, it's rough for a lot of people right now. As an example, when games like Ubisoft's Assassin's Creed Shadows and Star Wars Outlaws are selling for $130 for the full game first...
This is correct. This is one of the freaking things that he's showing. And by the way, just so you know, I am fine. I am quite fine. Actually, though, I'm not a freaking gigantic rich guy, but I'm doing well for myself. I actually don't have to think about everything I'm buying. I have a certain amount of luxury, so it's fine. But I came from fucking zero. And I understand how it is to be there. And it may be that you're in a position that I am, where you're saying, hey, I'm actually not that poor off. What the F? What's wrong with that? Show sympathy to those that are at zero, because that's not fun. You struggle immensely. And that's why I personally prefer to actually talk to people that came out of nothing and did something out of them, because they know how hard it is and they can show empathy to those who are at this point. And that's why I get actually quite agitated. Well, quite is, it's a bit overdone. It's not, but I get a little bit of agitation if somebody is a freaking billionaire and just waddles his money around, throws it around, and then just tries to lie in the face of everyone else and makes an entertainment out of people being just less fortunate than them, or even scamming people that just aren't as fortunate as you are, and don't know stuff. This is just something that
day experience without any regional pricing. That's over 700 Brazilian real. That's costing 1/4 of the average income of somebody in Brazil. You carry that pricing over to other countries with even lower average incomes and even less valued currencies, and one single game could be something that they could be saving months for. The cost of new video games is significantly impacting low-income consumers and making it more difficult for them to access some of these new releases. As prices for everyday essentials rise due to inflation, discretionary spending, including entertainment like video games...
Yes, I agree with him, and this is... But this is the people that are actually the freaking... this is something where if they pirate something, I understand it completely. This is understandable beyond reason. I mean, you either get food or get a game, so of course, but you still... I mean, you don't need it, it's still a luxury article, but still, you're gonna get it somehow. And it may just make your day a bit better. I still not saying that it's a good thing doing it, but it's understandable to a certain degree. Of course, if you commit a crime, you commit a crime. That's just as simple as that. But the motivation behind it is very, very important, in my opinion.
Becomes more constrained. This is particularly evident in low-income households, which spend a larger portion of their income just on necessities, and they have less flexibility when it comes to price increases. So what is someone to do when a game just isn't accessible for them? And even when games are on sale, it's still too expensive? Well, they pirate. Piracy is a service issue. Plain as day, as simple as can be. It's a famous line.
He's correct.
Before.
Yep.
Gabe Newell probably said it, I think, if I'm not mistaken, or something like that. But what's going on right now is that there is a severe lack of regional pricing in the industry. There's a lot of games that are out there that are not fairly priced in every region, and as such, there's a lot of players that are out there that just don't have access to these games. It's not realistic for them to be able to afford any of these. And I realize there's going to be some people that are going to hop in and go, hey, Mr. Streamer, YouTube guy, look here. There's tons of cheaper games that are out there. There's indie games that are out there. There's free-to-play games, man. There's free-to-play games. And while you're right, there are free-to-play options. You got games like Warframe or Genshin Impact or Fortnite and stuff like that. And while that stuff can work, keep in mind at the exact same time, a lot of games like that are built to take advantage of those kind of people. Not all of them, but a lot of them are. And what I mean by that is that it's much easier to get somebody to spend $3, $5, maybe $10 than it is to get them to spend $70 or $130. It's a way for them to be able to capture some of those sales that they haven't been able to get because some of those people can't spend that much money, but we can nickel and dime them. That's much easier to do. That's the part of the prevalency of microtransactions more than anything else. And keep in mind...
Yep, he's correct about that, and that's a pretty predatory practice, by the way. I hate it. I really hate it. Understand that a game... you need sustenance. You just need it. That's okay. If someone can't afford it, they can't afford it. It's that simple.
At the exact same too is that a lot of those games are built to take advantage of them also for being, well, food for the whales more than anything else. The schools of fish that the whales feed upon. And one of the things that's kind of bothering me lately, especially thinking about when people point to free-to-play games for folks that don't have a lot of money, is that I'm wondering if a lot of this regional price locking isn't put in place specifically to try to drive those players into their free-to-play games in the first place. And the reason being is because the more players that are there and the more players that aren't spending a lot of money that are there gives more fish for the whales to feed on. And also on top of that, it emboldens the prices and emboldens the purchases that a lot of these whales will end up paying for because of the fact that there's more people to be able to show off their skins to, more people to beat them in PvP, more people to show off their characters to, and whatever else. And I think it's also really important to keep in mind too is that while there are these free-to-play options and cheaper options, what if those aren't?
Yeah, but by the way, a lot of people actually don't give a F if you buy something. It's, for most people, it's just worthless. So if you want to buy something because it's, well, it looks nicer, I guess, it's fine. I mean, I did it myself. It is what it is just because I like the look of something. I still don't think it's good, but hey, as I said, I'm seeing it from two sides. From the, you have to make effing money, and from the, like here, the extreme cases where you can't even afford a game. But let's be honest, those aren't always the people that actually cannot afford a game. And as freaking, I really feel for the people that actually cannot afford it, and if they do the deed, I mean, I understand it. Still don't condone it, but I understand it. But if somebody can actually afford it, like, why would you pirate it? That's something I personally don't understand. Why? If you can afford it, then just do it. Just the game you like, just pay for it for F's sake. And even if you pirate something, then if you just want to try it out beforehand, in my opinion, there's nothing to say against it.
Aren't the games that these players want to play. Another key issue that's becoming more apparent year over year is digital only and online only. While the internet has become more widely accessible over the years, a 2023 study shows that approximately 67% of the world's population has access to the internet in varying degrees, but that still leaves 2.6 billion people without access at all. And keep in mind, I said varying degrees. While this study shows that they have access, the wide majority of that is likely not the high-speed internet that many of us enjoy, or even internet that's in their own household. Meaning that even if they have access, it's likely impossible to believe that any of them can even attempt to download Call of Duty Black Ops 6's half a terabyte download before Activision releases the next Call of Duty. And we're not even talking about how playable online-only games have put even more pressure on there and put even more games out of reach of players. I've seen far too many games over the last few years switch to playable online only, even when they're widely single-player experiences, or even completely single-player experiences. Some of them are doing it because they want to make sure that players have access to DLC and online stores. Some of it's because most of these games aren't even contained on the disc anymore.
Nah, let's be honest here. Most companies basically just do it so they can... because it's a piracy thing, it makes them like a bit extra safe, a bit safer, so to say, because, well, you can't play an online game if you pirate the thing, will you? And if you can somehow, well, I don't know of any method, not in those circles, but yeah, it's a bit,
However, the vast majority of it is because they're using it for anti-piracy purposes. They're using your internet connection to verify your purchase and your license and give you access to the game. Which, I'll be honest, I think is something that is only directly serving to exacerbate this issue of lower than projected sales that many of these companies have been pointing to. I mean, including these anti-piracy measures and forcing online only, sure, you're stopping a group of players who may play your games through illegal means. However, on the other hand, you're potentially cutting off access to the game from millions of other players that otherwise would have bought it. Let's use a game like Diablo as an example. Both Diablo 3 and Diablo 4 work for this because they are back-to-back Blizzard's fastest-selling titles of all time, record breakers. I mean, the Diablo franchise is one of the most recognizable IPs in all of gaming, but when you have a game that appeals to that wide of a player base, that attracts that much in sales, that equally means there is just as large of an audience that's out there that would have bought and played that game if they had the ability to. But they didn't because Blizzard didn't make it available to them by locking a mostly single-player experience to online only. Blinded by the allure of immediate sales, these companies are going for the bag when they could have gone for the bank the entire time. Personally, I find it hilarious.
I mean, he's correct partially, but in the end, do you need that much money? Like, honestly, do you need that much money? It's just, at a certain point, I know companies are there to actually make way more money than, but for F's sake, at some point, is it even worth it? Damn it, man. And I wouldn't be, because he's basically unintentionally also bring indie games in the same cluster as AAA freaking monster games, and that's just not how this works, for F's sake. A lot of indie games, like most, I would say, like, in my opinion, more than 99% of indie games are actually a passion project. From people that, of course, they want to make some bucks out of it, but it's passion. I at least would think so. I mean, I don't really have a proof of it, but at the end of the day, can you imagine something different in this case?
Hilarious that these CEOs are running to the media crying about how they're seeing the industry going downhill, how there's less people to be able to sell games to, how their investors are upset, they're going to have to lay off, it's just part of business, you know, they're reading the stars or whatever it might be, trying to figure out exactly what they're trying to do next, and it's all self-inflicted. This is all things that they're doing to themselves. It's almost like they didn't see the rake or even feel... They felt the rake, but didn't see the rake when they stepped on it. That's probably the best way to say it.
Yep,
and,
good one.
You know, I think that Sony and Helldivers 2 is the best example of this. Still to this day, It is not available in over 180 countries. That's over 90% of countries in the world that Helldivers 2 is not available.
Yeah.
You're doing this to yourself. When there are less players that have access to your games, that means that you make less money. That means that there's less people.
Yeah, and Helldivers 2, by the way, damn, did it fall from grace, and it's still falling. Damn, it was such a behemoth. And now it just fell down the rabbit hole. I mean, don't get me wrong, it still lives. It has, when I last checked, it was like 40k players at one time. It's still a giant amount, a big amount, but it's definitively not the same as it was. Not even close to the freaking behemoth it was. And I mean behemoth, like, damn, this was gigantic. And I was one of those that actually loved it. I freaking loved it, and I think I can count on one hand how many shooters I actually played in my life, or maybe on two. Maybe it goes to two. So yeah, and Helldivers was one of it. Was, as I said.
People that are playing your game. That means there's less people that are talking about your game. That's less people that are selling that game to their friends. When you don't make your games accessible, you make less money. Players have less options, and then those players go and make options for themselves.
Yep.
For many, piracy has become a necessity, even more so when we start looking at legacy titles and retro games. Piracy has increasingly become one of...
Oh, retro games. I mean, I'm not endorsing piracy from those. But, well, if it happens, it happens. Especially for games that actually are getting snuffed out step by step, so I don't encourage it, but...
the only options that we have available to us for games preservation due to the evolving nature of digital downloads and often the prohibitive barriers that are imposed by these game publishers. As digital distribution replaces physical media, many games are delisted from online stores, rendering them inaccessible to future generations. Additionally,
Cool.
if you look at DRM restrictions and online-only requirements, even legally purchased games become unplayable once servers for those games are shut down. We recently just saw this with a slew of different games from Ubisoft, like The Crew. In regions where games are either unavailable or unaffordable...
And by the way, I personally think if you close a server for this, an online game, you did it. You wanted it. If you close up the server, there should be 100% refund for that. Because it's not the customer's fault that you did it. You had to shut down. It's your fault. So yes, I am fully for it that you can even sue the guys for a full refund. Then just make a solo player game if you cannot uphold it for a few years. I would say there should be a time limit for it. Like if you have the servers up for, I would say if it's an online game only, no, the server should be forever. As long as there are people playing it, it should be forever. And if you don't, then the people that actually want a refund should get a 100% refund. They actually bought the price for.
Due to economic disparity or regional restrictions, piracy offers the only viable means to access and preserve a lot of these cultural artifacts. Without the unofficial channels that a lot of these players have access to, a significant portion of gaming history is completely lost, depriving future players of the joys that we've all had the chance to enjoy. I'd argue that the vast majority of people that are out there pirating games for themselves, trading pirated games, or buying them aren't doing it because they want to do it. They're doing it because they have to do it because there's no other options available to them. Again, this is something that is ultimately brought on by the industry that's creating these games and not the consumers themselves. Back in 2014, a passionate fan of the game PT, which is Playable Teaser, a critically acclaimed horror demo that was made by Hideo Kojima, found themselves in a difficult situation. The game, which was intended to promote the now canceled Silent Hills project, was suddenly removed from the PlayStation Store following Kojima's departure from Konami. For players who had already downloaded PT, it remained on their consoles, but for new players, they had no legal way to be able to access it. Recognizing the cultural and artistic significance of PT, this dedicated community fan took matters into their own hands. They distributed the game through various unofficial channels.
Yeah, by the way, I don't think this makes any sense. This specific argument isn't worthwhile in specifically here. Now, why would I say that? Well, it's pretty simple. This was a demo. It wasn't a promise. It wasn't a full-fledged game. It was a demo. So I disagree with him that PD should be in this list. As I said, it's just a demo. It was free stuff that got handed out. It got removed. It didn't get started up. So, tough shit, Buttercup. In this specific case. In this specific case, because it didn't go for money.
Ensuring that it could still be experienced and studied by future gamers and scholars. This act of piracy was driven by a genuine desire to preserve a unique piece of gaming history that would otherwise have been lost to time. Now we go and we look at how Nintendo has handled piracy and games preservation by beating it over the head with a legal cudgel. Anybody that's caught pirating or redistributing any of Nintendo's games will face the full might of Nintendo's legal team. There is a high demand for old Nintendo games that they haven't been filling. Now, while they have released systems like the NES Classic and SNES Classic, both of them selling tens of millions of units, by the way, there is a wide variety of classic games Nintendo doesn't make available. While luckily there are still some working physical versions of these products that are still out in the wild, the demand for these games is so high and the supply of them is so low that some of these prices have been jacked up to obscene highs by resellers. While the NES and SNES Classic were awesome releases, they don't include all of the games that were released on those systems, some of them being classics and favorites of many. Nintendo chooses to waste their legal fees chasing these sites and emulators rather than just making older games accessible and more affordable to everybody. Again, it's another company that's leaving money on the table for no good reason and creating a piracy issue on their own. Now, I want everybody to keep in mind that the NES...
But I agree with this one. If you, I mean, for fuck's sake, just sell these old games on the new console. Why wouldn't you do this? I mean, yeah, sure, you want to sell the new stuff, but if the new stuff sucks, and sorry, Nintendo fanboys, but if it sucks, it sucks. Like, come on. And it's not specifically Nintendo, don't get me wrong, but this is just the thing we just talked about. So,
NES Classic and the SNES Classic outsold modern consoles in the months that they were released in, which showed that there was a massive hole waiting to be filled. There was a huge part of the market that was looking forward to being able to experience these kind of games again, or even experience it for the first time. I'm sure there's a ton of newer generation, younger generation players that are out there that have wanted to play these games because they've been hearing about them their entire lives, watching videos like this, and they finally got the chance to play it on updated televisions with HDMI, and they went out and bought it too. They want to buy these games. They want to play these games, and it's as simple as that. It's just crazy to me looking at a company like Nintendo that's spending all this money on legal fees fighting piracy that they created themselves. If they would just make those games available and make them more widely accessible and affordable, well, then players are going to play them, and then all of a sudden, guess what? You don't need to spend all this money on legal fees. Chances are you'll make far more money doing it that way than the way that you're doing it right now. Look, this isn't a video about
by the way, yeah.
why piracy is good, because I don't think it's good. It's obviously illegal, and it's illegal for a good reason. But at the exact same time, it's not the pirates that are the problem here. It's the companies. Now, I want to...
Let's be totally honest here. As I said, I agree with a lot of things. Even if the pirate thing is a gigantic gray area. But for F's sake, come on. It's not a good thing. And no, there are not just... Like, the pirates can also be a problem. Like, don't encourage it to a certain degree. Like, don't encourage freaking illegal things, at least. Like, come on. We don't have to do that. Now, do we? I would say no. It's insane encouraging that, or saying that, oh no, the pirates aren't the problem. Yes, they are. They're doing something illegal. The only thing that's actually what I would say is, I understand why. That doesn't mean that it's right. And there are certain circumstances where it's a bit more understandable, but it's still bad.
Roll back to the initial tweet from Hikita. As creator of said game, you should support indies if you can, but culture shouldn't exist only for those who can afford it. Ultrakill wouldn't exist if I hadn't had easy access to movies, music, and games growing up. If you don't have money, you can support via word of mouth. Now, while I'm sure there are those that are out there that believe that those of low income or low income countries have a lot more to worry about than video games, Hikita is right. Status shouldn't be a barrier to happiness and culture, especially when that barrier is artificial. Games can be cheaper, games can be more available, and artificial restrictions that are imposed by the industry shouldn't have any bearing on somebody's access to enjoyment, education, and art. I think he also points out something else that far too many have lost touch with, and it's something that's growing more obvious over the last few years. Players sell more games than marketing does. Now, I've brought this up in the past in a previous video, but back in April, Baldur's Gate 3's head of publishing, Michael Dowse, was talking about the popularity and the sales of Baldur's Gate 3 and his thoughts on video game marketing. He was quoted saying, "Marketing is dead. It truly is. I can back this shit up, man. There are no channels anymore. It doesn't work. You used to have marketing, communication, and PR. Marketing was essentially just retail theory. You were trying to get your box on the right point of the store shelf. And you had partnerships with retail stores. Those pipelines are gone. Now you've got the internet. Nobody's looking at ads anymore. All of these channels we would use to market through are no longer really viable. So their function is also reduced."
This is something... Do I agree with this, though? I would say marketing is way less effective than it was. Yeah, I say that because marketing to a certain degree still works. It's still a thing you can do. I mean, I see my freaking parents actually didn't know what Assassin's Creed is until they seen it on the TV, and they actually got interested, and, well, some of them actually played it for a short time, so it's definitively an option. Now, do I think it's as powerful as it was? No, definitively not. Word of mouth is way more powerful right now than marketing itself is. I would at least say it with my experience, but this is also not something that I studied. It's just something I, well, basically believe in. Not even believe in, where my experience would say that it's true, but not to the degree that it's said.
Used by the fact that players just want to be spoken to. They don't want to be bamboozled. They just want to know what you're making, why you're making it, and who it's for. The reason I bring that up is because Hikita recognizes what many in the industry don't. Even players who can't afford to buy your games can help you sell your game. With the age of the internet and the prominence of social media, communication has been the best way to move products. Most people ignore ads. They do whatever they can do to try to avoid them. The more players that are talking about your game means it's more likely to be noticed by more people, and it's probably going to sell more copies. It's just as simple as that. The video game market is becoming more and more sad.
No, I disagree with him here, as I said, for the reasons I just said. It's just not entirely true. It's just not to 100% true, because marketing still can make a big difference, but not as big as it was.
Saturated year over year, especially on the indie side of things. And how many people do you think out of that 20.5 million views that retweet got heard about Ultrakill for the very first time? What percentage of those people maybe went and took a look at the game and then realized that it was a game that they wanted to buy and then they bought it? What are the chances that they bought it just because they really liked the guy's take and wanted to support an indie developer that was based? And it was as simple as that. Look, you know, the thing is that I saw a lot of people that were posting in some of the comment section on that retweet that were saying, oh, how long is he going to say this until everybody's now pirating his game? And you know, the funny thing is with that is that, like, you can say what you will about folks that are encouraging it, but the vast majority of people just aren't going to pirate. And the reason why is because there's too many risks that are associated with it. Me, as an example, I'm not going to play pirated games, not because I don't want to play games for free. That sounds fantastic. It's one of the reasons why I started a YouTube channel in the first place. But it's because I only have one computer, and the last thing that I want to do is screw it up because I was trying to download and play a game for free. Same thing can be said for people that have consoles. A lot of those folks don't want to have to go through the hassle or the risk of cracking those consoles for them to be able to play those games and play hacked games or play ROMs or whatever it might be. They don't want to have to deal with it. They don't want to have to deal with the risk. Even more so, a lot of folks that are out there are playing games. They're playing them with friends, and the last thing they want to do is not be able to play with their friends online if they do have online access. So, like, the general consumer market isn't going to be interested in pirating games because it's too risky and it's too much of a hassle. The vast majority of those people are just going to want to go and just play the game. They're going to want to go and buy it. It's as simple as that. And this is a service issue at the end of the day. It has nothing to do with the pirates. Piracy should be illegal. It's illegal for a good reason. But at the exact same time, this is an issue that's created by the companies that are making these games, and it's something that they have to fix. Players are going to find solutions for themselves. Consumers always find solutions for themselves. It's as simple as that. If you're not going to provide me with the service that I require, I'm going to go find it from somebody else.
I mean, require for F's sake you want the service, because at the end of the day, games are still a luxury good. So we don't require them. And yes, I am a gamer, so don't get me wrong. Of course I want effing games. And I love games. I love the storytelling of it. I love the activity of it. But it's still a luxury thing. It's not necessary to survive. I prefer to have them than not, but it's not necessary to survive. What I would say is, if somebody wants it, they cannot get it, or because it's too expensive or other things, they will find a way. And I personally think it's just a gray area. So I think he's leaning way too much on one side, that only one side is bad. And I would say that it's a 70-30 split. 70% the big companies, 30% the actual gamers. Because let's be honest here, a lot of people, if there were no whales, we wouldn't have the problems we have right now, would it? So yes, while I still think the companies are responsible for it, if it exists, well, there is a market for it.
That's what we do. If you're not going to sell me something for the price that I need you to sell it to me for, then I'm either going to wait or go buy it from somebody that's going to give me a better deal. And that's exactly what's going on right now. These companies are not filling needs that are in the market. And more, they keep complaining about the industry going downhill, and it's them that are making these games less available. You want to make all the money? Make it where everybody can play your games. But that's not what's happening. Whether that's console exclusivity, whether that's online only, whether that's locked regional pricing, or whatever it might be, there's all kinds of issues that are out there that these companies are causing, and they're the ones to blame for the piracy that they're creating. And they're the only ones that can fix it. Otherwise, players are going to find ways to play games. Simple as that. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video. That's all I got.
Yeah, I actually enjoyed it. I'm happy to hear someone that I'm not 100% on the same radar, but he made a lot of good points, and some that are maybe way too one-sided that he actually should, because as I said, I'm trying my best to see it from both sides. And every corner I nuke, and this is just such a freaking complicated thing that one perspective won't be enough. It just won't. But as it is, acolytes, good night.